You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
OCO, everyone.
OCO, everyone. Okay, so I just wanted to show my husband this video, and I wanted us to talk about Black history in a conversational manner because there's a lot of information that we're about to put out, and some of this information gets very deep. When we do it in video form, I know that it can be hard for some people to accept certain things and maybe even understand certain things. So I had the idea. I said, well, you know what, hun? Let's take a look at this video together. And I really wanted to see what you thought about it. And I wanted to share some notes that I had on Black history and some things that I discovered.
Okay. So this is going to be my first time seeing this video, everyone. And of course, I'm familiar with this topic. So let's see. You know, she wanted me to see this video. We'll see. Let's see. I don't know what this is about. I'll get ready to play it, though. You ready?
I'm ready.
The subject I'm asked to talk about a lot in the course of my work is the transatlantic slave trade. You know, the trade in enslaved Africans between Europe, Africa, and the Americas between 1500 and 1800 that resulted in the enslavement of 10 to 12 million people. And something I've noticed is that when I'm talking to a group consisting entirely of white people, different questions come up than when I have a group with a single black person in. Questions which I never get asked in front of a black person.
Africans sold their own people into slavery. Why aren't you talking about that? What about the Arabs? What about the Irish? What about all the good stuff that Britain did? Why do you have to keep bringing up old history?
Why is it only white people ask this stuff? I don't know. And I'm not saying black people never hear these questions, obviously. One look at Twitter will tell you they definitely do. I think people have a lot of questions about the slave trade. I don't blame anyone for not wanting to research this stuff themselves. It is extremely depressing. But today I'm going to try and answer these questions in the best faith I can. This isn't going to be a comprehensive primer on the trade. These are just answers to some questions that I get a lot. Now folks, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on this subject. I haven't written any books or done any degrees on transatlantic slavery. Also, I live and work in London, and so I talk about the trade as it relates to Britain and London specifically. I'm not going to be doing US stuff like the Founding Fathers, the Underground Railroad, or the American Civil War here. You guys need to figure that out on your own, okay?
Okay.
So a quick primer on the transatlantic slave trade. Starting in the 15th century, Europeans used Africans as cheap slave labour on plantations in the newly colonised Americas. Millions of Africans are transported across the Atlantic Ocean. This trade is sometimes called the triangle trade because of how the routes of the ship look if you plot them on a map. Ships leave Europe with finished goods, trade them for people in Africa, take the Africans to plantations in the Americas, cotton,
hold up.
sugar.
Hold up. Not with them ocean giants sitting right there. And that's why you wanted me to see this?
Okay, so it's a reason why I wanted you to see this.
Oh, man. Wow.
When I saw this video, I was laughing. Just like you were laughing.
Yeah.
Because there's something that everybody missed in all of this information. And it deals with both England and America.
Okay.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I'm saying this is because I know that recently they put stuff in school talking about they're going to take out Black history and stuff like that. And we have a lot of people that are in an uproar about it because they think that they're being told the truth. And they're saying, you know, they're withholding our history. And, you know, when we think about Black History Month and Black history, they teach very little, you know, about people having inventions or the good things about so-called Black people. But they make sure to put in a whole bunch about slavery, Civil War, and things that deal with those things. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so notice how she said she wasn't going to talk about slavery in America.
Right.
and then went in to talk about slavery in America.
Oh man.
So
that was so funny.
That, whenever I think about slavery or Black history, it never came to my mind to think about the founding fathers. Now, I'm just going to state that one of the reasons why Black history is possibly being removed is because Black history isn't the history of the Niji of America, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Black history, as we've been telling people, were stories that may had some truth to it with a whole bunch of lies added into it. That's if there is some truth to it. But in reality, Black history is white people's history. Okay? I'm going to tell you why.
Go ahead.
So remember, do you remember Charles Dickens?
Charles Dickens, that sound familiar. Refresh my memory.
Okay, so he was a famous author in the past. His novels were The Christmas Carol, Oliver Twist.
Oh, yeah.
Great Expectations.
Yeah. Definitely know Oliver Twist. I had to read that. Mm-hmm.
Now, we get a repeat of these types of story. We get a repeat of movies and videos and this type of content on a yearly basis.
Yeah.
And nobody asks why, okay? Because while they try to put Black history in 1 month, which is the month of February, they are also sharing Black history every year. Like, for instance, The Christmas Carol, I'm pretty sure people play that every Christmas.
Yeah.
And in these particular movies and content of this nature, they're always showing extremely poor white children within the novel
Oliver Twist.
and within the movies.
Yeah, that's true.
The Christmas Carol, you had...
Oh, yeah. You right. You right. Yeah. All of us. Yeah, you right.
They were poor.
Dealing with London, by the way. Go ahead.
Dealing with England. That's important.
Yeah.
Because, and the reason why they show this information is because it has a miracle of some sort at the end. But they'll tell you also that Black history started in 1500. So the reason why I'm telling you this, and in particular how it correlates to the month of February, is because February was the month that had the most mine explosions. I brought this up to you the other day when you did the live stream talking about blackface.
Yeah.
I said, well, their first instance of blackface was working in the mine.
Right. Because of all the debris and
cold.
The cold.
So it gets on their face.
Cold. Yeah, it gets on their face. That's right.
So the reason why we have Black History Month in February, they didn't just choose that month like, okay, this is good for Black people, but it is good for Black people. The real Black people who were these white children that were mine workers. Okay?
So, wait, but why in February? Looking for gold?
Because in February, they had the most mine explosions. The drop in the temperature made it difficult for them to know when another element was going to rise quickly.
Okay.
February has a root word in there of fever or fever. So that deals with something rising quickly. Yeah. There's a lot of death and illness in February. So this is in February. Yeah, this is the month of Black history.
Okay.
But they had to push it off onto another group of people. When someone has a fever, right? If they have a high fever, the body shuts down. It does a reset. And what happens afterwards is sleep. Yeah. But when you're asleep, you can forget things or you can be reminded. So the whole point was to try to put everybody to sleep and make those whose history they were really talking about, they want them to forget it, but they want to remind it to another group of people.
Oh, so move it to another set group of people. I see what you're saying.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
So they
what was the name of that popular game that was on computers I used to play all the time? Wasn't that called mining or something like that?
Mining.
I believe it was called Mine, something like that, where you get to click on, like it was like little bombs and you had to make
and
sure.
it was for free.
Right, and it was for free. Remember that, right?
And if
that's
you
the first thing that popped up on my. Exactly. If you hit the wrong spot, it blows up. Exactly. That's what that reminded me of.
So the reason why I brought all that stuff up and talked about the books that Charles Dickens wrote is because Black history began with people that had bad credit.
You said with people that had bad credit.
With people that had bad credit. And if you really think about that, if you think about credit history, who has bad credit now? Who they say have bad credit?
The majority of our people.
They gonna say Black people, right?
Yeah.
A Black history is a bad history.
Right.
Okay? It dealt with bad credit because in the past, what people don't know, the history of our prisons deal with debt prisons. Debt prisons. That's where prisons started. So if you fell into debt somehow, because everything was running off of credit and debit, okay? Or credit and debt. If you fell into debt, then they put you into a debt prison. But they didn't put just you into the debt prison, okay? So the father, let's say the father, into debt prison. The whole family went into the debt prison.
Damn, the whole family though? Like how, I mean, like, damn.
So in England, Charles Dickens was in this situation. His father went into bankruptcy. And at the age of 12, he was withdrawn from school. The whole family was moved into the debt prison of Marshalsea.
That sounds like a concentration camp.
It is similar to a ghetto and similar to a reservation.
So it was reserved. Okay.
It's reserved for poor people.
Yeah.
It's like how they section off the rich, the middle class, and the poor.
Yeah.
So he was forced at the age of 12 to work in a factory. Okay?
Okay.
Mind you, I said all of this has to do with mining. And, you know, a Black person wasn't a Black person because of their skin color. They were Black because the coal dust and the factory they were working in would get on their face.
Yeah.
So they called them. So they called them Black people.
Wow.
This is the real Black history.
That makes sense, complete sense, because even the pictures that I have of the industrial system that came about during the top of the 1700s and, you know, in full commercial use, it was nothing but women and children. And then I remember recalling that a lot of those factories were being blown up because certain their structures weren't all the way together. They needed our people's help in order to keep their factories afloat, meaning just by the structure alone. I'm not trying to change the subject, but that's things that I could recall that I went past when, you know, researching.
The reason why I'm saying this is because remember in my previous video when I said those who were labeled as E were a diminutive termination? That means people that had little skill or no high school education.
Yeah.
They were used as guinea pigs. So they knew, and you said these places were blowing up and all of that. So that's the reason why they were taking these children and sending them into the mines and working them in the factories, because they knew that something could happen to them. And because they said they were poor and, you know, they were already diminutive terminations, just go ahead and let them do it. So you'll find multiple pictures from the past. And when I say from the past, I'm talking about the 1900s. Because when we talked about how they wanted to give their children a better future, and this is when the Black history that we know was implemented.
It's true.
And they tried to get rid of the white slave trade.
We were talking about education when that came up. Who was that? That was no, that wasn't Henry Pratt. Who was that? Oh no, we were talking about, was it the one on the USA flag and how they had to salute it was stating that affirmation, that negative affirmation. Was it that one? The Pledge of Allegiance?
Well, it was about the European, I think, that, you know, we have to put back up, I guess.
Okay.
that we're going to put back up. Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'll put it up.
So the reason why I'm saying this is because slavery was always about, and you mentioned this before, they had to do these things to the kids because they didn't know any better, right?
Yeah, they're more vulnerable. Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go into more detail on this into a video that I put out also on my channel. But the reason why I wanted to bring this up is because notice how when Charles Dickens went through the situation at the age of 12, because his father went into poverty, he didn't have no say-so. They didn't have any say-so. They literally took his child and said, now you're going to go to work. And this type of situation is happening today with people in poverty. The government and different organizations think that they're still able to take people's children and do whatever they want to do with them.
And call it child protective services, right? That's why a lot of those people were, so not immigrants, they were orphans at that time. A lot, even Oliver Twist. Oliver Twist was an orphan and they ended up, having an overseer. No, they had they put them to work too, robbing other people. They had what is it called? What's that guy? His position was not an overseer, an apprentice.
Who was an apprentice? Oliver Twist?
The guy that was in charge of them.
Exactly. It's the reason why they use the word apprentice.
Okay.
The guy that was in charge of them was really the master.
Right.
But they're going to tell you, okay? Because they're going to tell you that he was an apprentice because the children were really, when they go work for somebody and learn a particular skill, they're the apprentice. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They are the apprentice. So he would be considered a journeyman. I mean, in a technical sense. Mm-hmm.
Slave master.
Slave master. And I was dealing with all children, and they were all poor, but they were all orphans. And it's not odd that Charles Dickens would talk about that based off of his own background. I mean, because that's his people. Of course, he's going to be talking about the situations they were in. Yeah.
Now, how did that get over here into America? That's what people are going to want to know. If that was happening in England, how did it get over here? But before I tell you how it got over in America, is two other things I want to mention, okay? Because there were laws back then that if your family was poor, they can take your children. That's one.
In the UK?
Yeah.
Okay.
If your parents got divorced, they can take your children.
Damn.
They still do that today. If you get divorced, then there's somebody that's going to mediate for the children.
That's true. Well, I mean, as far as who's paying, like who get to see what, who paying child support.
The government took your children.
Yeah, technically, they're wards of the state. Yeah, technically. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So they put all these laws in.
This how you know this still the British government. Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, from back then to even today, they put all these laws in where they can take your children and do whatever they want to do with them. Okay? So I want to go to this particular part because the name Charles Dickens. Okay? I revealed in that video talking about Leave the World Behind.
Yeah.
When I was mentioning Charleston and broke that down, that Charles means black. So Charles Dickens wasn't his real name, because saying Charles Dickens is like saying slave Dickens, black Dickens, or inmate Dickens. Charles was a name that was given to only those people who worked with coal.
That's another nickname.
It's a job title.
This job title. Yeah, that's what I was referring to in the last names video. A lot of them were having their job titles in the front or the back as their first or last name. That's what I mean by that. Go ahead, babe.
Notice how we have nicknames as our names.
Yeah.
We'll put a job title in there sometimes or whatever, but we'll have a descriptive name, okay?
Yeah.
All of them, if you look at the majority of white people, they all carry the same names.
Yeah.
So they carried the names of their slave masters because they carry the name of the job title.
Now, that is true. And I also found out that when they were transported over here by means of transportation, AKA that's their jail sentence, or if they came over here by way of an mass immigration, they were also given names that were indigenous to this landmass, first and last names that were indigenous to this landmass so they could fit in. This is still happening today. Chinese people come over here and are given our names to be placed on their IDs. Same thing with Africans. Like, notice that. Now, all of us, sometimes just recently here, and when I mean by recent, like the past 5, maybe 7 years, it could be a little bit longer than that, but they allowed certain people to have their names or to keep their names. Now, I'm talking about their original names. But prior to any of that, a lot of people had to get their names changed because they felt as though they wouldn't be able to, pick up a job over here. It went like that.
Exactly.
This is another reason why I was trying to tell people that we didn't get our first or last names from slave masters. We had our first and last names. Everybody else copied so they could fit in and get jobs, because we wasn't about to hire somebody that was gonna be nah. We ain't hiring them motherfuckers. They gotta have a name that we could recognize that includes their job title. That person is one call away. You know what? I'm gonna pick that person up.
Yeah.
It's just like that. I know I could rely on that person. He one call away. It's the same thing.
Okay, so I want to read something, okay? Because I got out these particular facts. I want to get those things out first before I read this information that's being held by Berkeley law.
Okay.
According to Berkeley law, in 1620, the Virginia Company complained to Sir Robert Naunton, principal secretary of James I, that London
James
Street,
the First.
Yeah, James the First. That London Street children were unwilling to be sent to Virginia colony as apprentices. Now, this is important because once they take your child from you and they put them to work, they immediately put them to work somewhere they don't want to work. If they survive for a couple of years, then they'll take them and make them apprentices, meaning they're selling them out to go to different places. That's an indenture.
Yeah.
So it says the city of London have by act of their common council appointed 100 children out of their superfluous multitude to be transported to Virginia, there to be bound apprentices for certain years, and afterward with very beneficial conditions for the children. Now it falleth out that among those children, sundry being ill disposed and fitter for any remote place than for this city, declare their unwillingness to go to Virginia, of whom the city is especially desirous to be disburdened, and in Virginia under severe masters, they may be brought to goodness. In response, the Privy Council granted the Virginia Company permission to do whatever necessary to force the children into the ships. The Virginia Company was desperate for child labor and went to great lengths to import unwilling youths. Second, while it is not clear whether or not they had parents, these children certainly immigrated without them and were placed in the custody of the masters to whom they were apprenticed. And third, neither the Virginia colonists nor the English showed any concern for the best interests of these children, nor, for that matter, for basic due process before punishment rights guaranteed adult Englishmen, but apparently not children. I brought this up because this is held by Berkeley law, stating this was happening in 1620. Okay?
I'm very familiar with that. That the 100 children went to James City.
It was more than 100 children, is what I'm stating.
Eventually, yeah, but that first 100 that they're referring to, I remember that. Remember when we went down there, when we went to Jamestown, aka James City, and remember I read that off. They didn't see that part because that's something I held on my own. That part, the historical marker down there referring to those children, that 100 children came from London. That's what they're referring to right there. But you being used as slaves, people got to understand when they were dispersing these children, they weren't going to other so-called Englishmen. Okay, colonists did not have a set skin tone. It could have been people who were considered Indian that could have took these children on. In most cases, it was because they were the landowners. They were the sharecroppers. Okay, these children ended up becoming parts of, certain so-called plantations because they were there to do a duty. A plantation is doing what? You're building a field, you're building a farm, you're growing crops, you're growing plants. They're there to do a duty, and they had to do it regardless if they wanted to or not. Yeah, away from their parents. They kept sending children. That's correct. They knew that was going to work.
Another reason why they were sending children and who they were sending them to were these people who were called the Reeve.
The what?
The Reeve.
Threve?
The Reeve. R-E-E-V-E.
Okay. That sounds familiar.
Also known as the Reverend, or better known as the River End. And they were in business for taking and making corporations of the poor in England starting in the 1500s. So that's why when we see over here, we have a lot of land being bought by reverends, and that whole movement that went on, you see they were in high positions in the past because they were actually government workers.
Correct. Still are.
Reverend is a government title, basically.
Yeah. The same thing as a prime minister. Minister is another one. Governor. Same thing.
So these reverends were slave masters. That's why you hear things in the Bible say, listen to your slave master. That was the whole point in all of that stuff that they're trying to hide, because and that's the reason why they were also trying to get those who are indigenous in America to basically be okay with religion so that they can join in also, as far as on either side. For instance, let me just say this, like if somebody strange moves next door to you, right? And you see a whole bunch of children going into that house and you don't know these people, you gonna be like, red flag, what's happening? And they gonna come and tell you, oh no, we're just doing God's work. And then they start teaching you a little bit about it. You may think that they're not doing anything bad over there.
Shit, I know. I'm consciously aware that a lot of child trafficking is happening still to this very day. That's what slavery was all about anyway, child trafficking.
That's the Black history that they're trying to cover up by putting in the false Black history. And the reason why I said that is because if we think back to the video when this woman is talking about how it went, it goes from two different perspectives and two different perceptions. Because if you're taught about Black history in America, they're going to start by saying they left America with goods to go to England. And then they're going to tell the same story and say they came from England, came down to Africa, got slaves, and then brought them to America. But nowhere in the story do I remember hearing them leaving England with goods already to pick up the slaves in Africa.
Right. Not only that, who were their contacts in Africa?
You see? So if they're telling that history over there, there's a reason why they're telling that. Because the slaves that they're claiming they picked up in Africa is really the children that they were bringing from England.
From Europe.
From the start.
Yeah.
And they're hiding that.
Yeah. They didn't pick up nobody from Africa. They literally came from that landmass, Eurasia. They came from all of Eurasia and came here because that makes more sense than you having to go to another landmass that you're unfamiliar with in order for them to go work. Not saying that didn't happen, but it didn't happen in a large mass as a day, But they're not even trying to tell you that it happened. They're trying to tell you that.
Exactly.
Yeah. They're trying to tell you that they came from Europe to Africa to pick children up from Africa and then bring them to the Americas.
That's story. They put
That's
the
incorrect.
picture and the story in there for everybody because even they're repeating it because they know they came from Britain with something.
Right.
And so they're going to tell them they came with goods. And then they're going to tell them this whole story and say, okay, no, it wasn't you. It was these Black children right here that we took from Africa. Okay. But the way that they're putting emphasis on retelling the story every year Isn't that the same thing that a prosecutor does when they're preparing a key witness that could be involved in a court case? Because the same story is being regurgitated over and over again.
Yeah. Priming up the not the witnesses. What is that? The
jury. The
jury, yeah.
Yeah. So basically, Black history is about them in a nutshell. The whole thing is about them and their
Another
story.
thing that was told to you in reverse. Another thing that was told to you in reverse. And it goes back to what I said years ago. I remember in the beginning, I was saying that was my theory. My theory was that they told a lot of this history. They told a lot of these stories in reverse. And I'm talking about hasn't failed yet. We're exposing them left and freaking right. And it's coming right back. A lot of this stuff has been told in reverse. Where they weren't talking about us, they were talking about themselves. And the reason why it lines up is because it is going to be unbiased people out there, or unbiased sources, not only just people, unbiased sources, okay, where this information is being hidden, especially by those popular search engines that you look for. You know, you try to go to that. That's why they want you to depend on those things, because they know you're going to look at only the surface, what's above the surface. They're depending on you, not trying to go underneath the surface and trying to go deeper or see what's being hidden or see what's being built on top of it. The reason why they're regurgitating this information every year is because that's controlling the narrative. It's a constant reminder. This is another reason why all information gets changed every, 10, 20, 30 years, mainly 10. Every 10 years, they try to change information. Like during my last video that I posted on the channel, and I was talking about the post office. Mm-hmm. Do you know people thought that the post office was an entity of the government? But when I told them that the post office is an independent agency and has been ever since its inception, you know, certain people like, huh?
Yeah, and that just happened. They had things happening in the 60s and the 70s where they were going on strike for that.
Yeah, now I'm pretty sure now what's going to happen is, and I was forewarning them that they just recently changed certain things. But yeah, the post office is dependent on themselves. They make their own money. They make their own income. They don't get loans from the government.
It's a bank. It's a bank.
It's a bank. And I've been telling them to look at the post office because the history, dealing with our people especially, this is how you know we had something already in place that's very similar to the post office, because they changed the original post office in 1971 to the United States Postal Service. So it went from an independent agency to an independent service. But still, they had board members. They did have, you know, like Congress had a look-see at what was going on, but they just didn't have control. Same thing today, but they're changing it now. Slowly. They are changing it now. Eventually, they want to be more nosy with your privacy. When your mail is coming in, when your checks are coming in, whatever you order is coming in. They want more control of that portion of the trade. Be mindful of that because they are changing things up. They're trying to state that the United States Postal Service went bankrupt a couple of times already. And they did not. They did not go bankrupt, but they're trying to say that there was a big, large mass of lost revenue. And Congress needs to step in. But this only happened because of Joe Biden. The rules, to go back to what we were just saying in the other video that they may see first before this one, I'm not sure. Joe Biden changing rules or whoever, it doesn't even matter who, the government, straight up, the government. Doesn't matter what president it is, the government is changing the rules. And the reason why is because they want more control. To go back to this history that we're talking about as far as Black history, the reason why you won't ever think about the fact that they're referring to the foreigners who wore a form of blackface because they were, coal miners and they were children mainly. You won't ever think of that because that is not being regurgitated, even though that story did exist in history and is very true as to who they're referring to as far as Black people is concerned. Just think about that. They weren't Negroes at that time. Think about it. The British wasn't speaking Spanish, were they? So where that term Negro come from? And keep in mind, Black came before Negro too. 1850 U.S. Census. That's another thing y'all should be paying attention to. 1850 U.S. Census, and our people was turning their nose up, but they had another option. They had mulatto, and our people fell for that because they knew black was derogatory. This is a whole nother way for them to change the narrative. They said, all right, well, you know, I'm gonna put myself down as mulatto because I'm not about to be called black. I'm talking about our people needed to do more than just speak up. Our people needed to step up and do something about it, allowing these foreigners to dictate and determine what was going on over our people. And these people were peons the entire time, and they still are. They're not above us. White supremacy is an illusion. They are peons, and they've been lying this entire time. And you think they gave you a month? Nobody else gets a chance to celebrate something. Because what are you celebrating? The stories that they want to be regurgitated. It's not the fact that, you know, some traditional cultures that you're celebrating. They want you to celebrate specific people at specific times that did specific things that didn't benefit you. It benefited the government. Because right now, we can't say that Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, whoever they're going to bring up, changed a law that worked in our favor. Yeah, but Dane, they was out there marching and they was out there talking and okay. They doing that right now. Are we changing any laws? Black Lives Matter, prime example. What law did Black Lives Matter get changed? After all that marching and protesting, all that donating, all them burning down buildings and everything, hooping and hollering and interview after interview, and what happened? Nothing. Same thing. Same thing. And then they work towards your pain. They know you need money. They know you need money. So they're going to tell you they're going to give you reparations. There's a reparations proposal. In other words, there's a reparations promise that they don't have to keep. They're going to garner your vote. Come on, get that person in there. He going to make that pass. So as soon as that person get in there, same thing. Nothing get done. It ain't going to get done unless you get it done for yourself. I got this whole time, they talking about foreigners. This whole time. Shout out to my wife.
Shout out to my husband.
Anything else you wanted to say, baby?
I just wanted to share that with you and us, share our take on this information, this particular portion together, because we have some other things that we're going to talk about dealing with Black history. But if everybody knows that the stories are false from the start and where Black history came from, maybe it'll help them get a better understanding.
Hopefully. Regardless, if you don't get a better understanding from this video right here, we got, again, like she said, we got more videos coming out. Be on the lookout for that. Subscribe to my channel and subscribe to her channel. Tanisha Calloway, T-A-N-E. Like I'm D-A-N-E, she's T-A-N-E. I-S-H-A. Calloway like the golf club, C-A-L-L-O-W-A-Y. No, you don't want to see me in golf, but you definitely want to subscribe to my wife's channel. Click the like button. Let them know that you want to see more content like this from us. Let them know. And who was them, Dane? You know how YouTube don't try to let y'all see our content. Go ahead, keep smashing that like button. Throw it in their face. We appreciate all the love and support from all of you all. We will see you next time. Wado.
Wado.
I'm just here to make you think.
Slow down. Yeah.